Welcome to the show today. Hired the podcast. As always, I'm Travis Miller, and I am here with former MRG account executive Tyler Miller and founder and managing partner of Charles and Owen Revenue Advisory. Charles and Owen Revenue Advisory. C&O Revenue Advisory for short. Tyler, revenue ops is relatively new concept.
Mm-hmm.
You know, operations has been around since before Henry Ford. And sales operations is something that has come into effect the last, 10, 20 years, 30 years even?
That's probably about right. I mean, not 30. The tasks associated with revenue ops have always existed in some form or another.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask about is sales ops feels like it's been around for a long time. Mm-hmm. Revenue ops, I think I first heard the term 3 or 4 years ago even.
Sure.
So when we were planning for this, I said, I don't really want to come out here and just say, so revenue operations. I mean, that's great podcast hosting.
Sure.
But revenue operations?
Good question. So as you mentioned, like sales operations is focused mainly on the sales organization, trying to ensure that sellers have the processes, tools, technologies, strategies in place to do their jobs as well as they can, be as productive as possible, be as efficient as possible, spend as much time in front of customers as they can, right? Sales operations kind of started more tech-oriented. Okay. We have a bunch of tools. We need to do compensation. We need to do territories. We need to do CRM stuff. So those activities that are part of the suite of sales operations activities, someone was always doing them, but the roles were, or the activities were pretty decentralized.
Okay.
You know, finance and HR might take care of the compensation plans. IT or operations might take care of tech and tools and so forth. And then the sales leaders are doing things like playbooks, sales strategy, sales process, et cetera. So, you know, years ago, some of those functions started getting centralized under, you know, the guise of sales operations or under the sales organization, focused to start largely on the more tactical aspects, things like, you know, the tech and tools and manage the comp plans, the relatively lower value, no offense to any sales compensation professionals or IT folks, but the things that sellers or salespeople or C-level executives aren't built to do, but we're kind of having to do, especially in early stage organizations. Now, the trouble as sales operations started to progress and become more strategic and more go-to market oriented is they had to deal with the other parts of the organization. Marketing, service. If we're thinking tech, we're thinking about customer success. You know, how do we make sure that customers are happy with the product, using the product, and will order from us again or renew the offering that we have. So sales operations kind of evolved into revenue operations, which intends to kind of break down the silos from those disparate parts of an organization. At the same time, a lot of organizations have shifted from, you know, say having a SVP of sales be kind of the sales leader that reports up to a CEO to having a chief revenue officer or a CRO that then sales and service and perhaps marketing, although a lot of organizations do have a chief marketing officer. That CRO kind of centralizes that whole, what we might call a go-to customer or a go-to-market model.
Yeah, when I was doing the research for this conversation, Google revenue operations, I finally read a description that really made sense in my head. Revenue operations is designed to tear down the walls between all of the different departments in the company and bring them together towards a common goal, which is revenue. Is that a pretty good grasp of it?
Yeah, I mean, revenue is and should be, I think, the most important metric that folks in revenue operations are oriented around. Now, it might not be a metric that you would track with respect to gauging the effectiveness of the RevOps team, but these people in revenue operations or go-to-market effectiveness type roles do need to be focused on thinking, well, is the thing that I'm doing, the thing that I'm working on or prioritizing, going to have a positive impact on revenue via, enablement or training activities can improve the productivity or effectiveness of salespeople. Revising compensation plans can motivate people to overachieve, that kind of thing.
Well, I mean, it makes sense because in companies, especially in larger companies, how often is marketing over here and sales is over here and IT technology is over here and manufacturing and operations are over here and executive leadership is over the top, but do they have any idea what each one is doing or why they're doing it? IT spends so much of their time researching new technologies and new products with barely talking to the sales team or the marketing team about those tools and technologies and what they need. So RevOps is, I don't know, the den mother, bringing everyone together for the common good of the organization?
I think that's fair. I mean, RevOps people are not going to be, devs or programmers typically. They'll be sharp enough to implement systems and tools with maybe the support of IT and the approval of. But one of the main kind of values they bring to that sort of, call it motion related to systems and tools is they typically have a good understanding of, what's out there, right? We have a menu of options that can take care of prospecting, call monitoring, recording, setting up cadences, research, scraping the internet for contacts. So we think about things like ZoomInfo for contacts or SalesLoft for, cadence and outbound call management. And they need to be able to build business cases around these options. Hey, I'm just going to use a super basic example of a CRM, right? Imagine an organization without a CRM. They need one. Nobody's ever heard of it before, which obviously, again, far-fetched example. But someone in a sales or revenue operations function would be charged with the task of, why do we need this? Who's going to use it? Who's going to manage it? What are the rules of engagement with it? And what's the uplift? Why should we spend $10, $20, $100,000 a year on whatever tool? How much is it going to grow revenue? How much is it going to grow profitability? And that's one thing that can potentially impact revenue. There's plenty of levers that can be pulled in order to grow revenue or increase the profitability of revenue growth. How do we prioritize that? So the revenue operations people and teams aren't just accountable for implementing a tool or doing an initiative. They need to be thinking holistically about the revenue organization and which initiatives to prioritize.
How does revenue operations and deciding which initiatives to prioritize, how does that converge with another silo of an organization that we barely talked about, which is human resources, hiring, talent development, talent training, talent attraction? How does that work together? Because if you're solely focused on revenue, as the title implies, how do you bring that to what so many companies say, and I hope none of them are giving lip service to it, but our most important resources are people? And how does focusing on revenue as primary driver, primary metric, translate to the human side of it? Our people are our most important resource.
Yeah, makes sense and good question. So kind of tell a story here, but an organization that's figuring things out, one of the first things they need to figure out is, how do we cover the customer life cycle? We're prospecting, we're having initial conversations, we're getting a product in the hands of a customer. We're fulfilling by delivering and making sure they're having a good time, right? So we think across that, customer life cycle or the buyer life cycle. And from there, we can determine what sort of job roles do we need. Do we need someone just to prospect and close deals with customers first time and then service takes care of them on the back end? Do we need someone to do all of that? If we think about a tech organization, do we need a hunter and then a farmer and then a customer success person who's going to make sure that the customer's having a good time and using the product? right? So we do this coverage mapping, and then we do this job design, which includes, the type of talent, skills, qualifications that people need. So that's when we start to collaborate a little bit more closely with HR, so that we have a shared understanding of the type of people, the type of personas and backgrounds that we might need to fill these roles. Now, if we advance in what we might call, a revenue framework, we'll then start to worry about, compensation. Okay. How much does a certain person cost on the market? If I need a salesperson to cover, the top few Fortune 500 organizations, that's a different cost for that type of role or job than someone who's, cold calling 300 small and medium businesses in a week. So we need to have a shared understanding of that talent profile, and we need to have alignment on what the compensation plan looks like. And the most important parts of any compensation plan is, can you attract, retain, motivate the type of talent that you need in order to achieve your strategic goals? Okay. So some organizations, we want to have, we want to go get it, profit be darned. We're going to pay a ton of money for these people and poach them from high performing organizations and get them to do it for us. Other organizations, can be bottom feeders. I mean, maybe they wouldn't use that term, but you can pay below market and hire people with less experience and, either train them up or let them sink or swim, right? And all of these decisions related to compensation are going to have an impact on not only the type of talent you target, but the type of talent that you are most easily able to retain. If I hire a rock star from, Microsoft, and I'm a startup organization and I don't have anything in place and I'm not paying them very much, they're going to get out of there pretty quick. Yeah. But if I hire someone from, college and a couple years of lead gen experience, maybe they'll make it. Maybe they're not. But if I'm an organization, again, on more of that bottom feeder, conservative approach, I need to think through how I can fail fast. In fact, I'd say that through any organization. So that gets to another point. How do we assess talent? Right? So we've got people in the door. What metrics and KPIs are we using in order to determine, hire, fire, promote, put someone on a PIP, that kind of thing. Okay? So this talent profile and determining what metrics and KPIs, independent of the compensation plan, need to be used in order to measure the effectiveness of an individual are critical in managing and retaining talent. If I'm a salesperson and my comp plan is revenue and I'm generating a bunch of revenue, great. But if my management also cares about, how many meetings are you having? How many calls? How many emails? What's your pipeline? How quickly are you advancing things through the sales cycle? How is your close rate? What's your average deal size? If all of those things are suboptimal, then I need to focus on training that person up, because that person who's getting 100% of quota, you figure out ways to get that person exceeding their, their call volume targets, or they're lowering their sales cycle, increasing their win rates. There's a compounding effect there. Okay, so we need to be thinking across all the metrics that we can pull, all the levers that we can pull in order to drive growth and, to put it bluntly, extract the most value from employees, get the most productivity from them as we can. And people who succeed and exceed quota, we'll pay them more, right? Now, it's not enough to just look at those metrics and say, hey, you're doing good, hey, you're doing bad. And this is, one of the most important areas where, revenue operations or a sales leader or anyone in the revenue organization will want to collaborate very closely with HR. And that's sales enablement. And when I say sales enablement, I'm talking about, again, tech and tools and training, but also learning and development. What's the information that a seller needs to know and that we need to push at them, and under what cadence, in order to maximize their growth within the organization and promote their ability to succeed. So things like having a clear-cut sales process and sales playbook, that kind of thing is table stakes, but may fall under that enablement sort of umbrella. But we think about, coursework and product trainings and negotiation training as an example. Now, you can do a shotgun approach and push all this content in collaboration with HR, who will support kind of the understanding of where people fall on the spectrum with regards to those skill sets. But what's really important is customizing it. If I have a great negotiator and a cruddy negotiator on my team as a sales leader, I don't need to push the negotiation training to the high performer or the person who's really good at negotiating, because they're already doing it. It's going to be a waste of their time. And what I want to do as a sales leader, as a revenue leader, is get my team in front of customers as much as possible. Maximize the available, call it sales time, that each person has, and also maximize the effectiveness of it. So when we're thinking about enablement and how HR plays into it, we think about, how can we level people up across the various competencies, so to speak, that we need to demonstrate. So we think about, what we might call competency models. Pick 5 or 6 categories of skills that you want people to demonstrate and advance through in order to continue to perform or continue to advance within an organization. So again, let's just use negotiation as a basic example. Someone comes into the organization, they're a level 1 negotiator.
How do you assess that? How do you know if somebody's, because a lot of these things you're talking about seem difficult to measure. How do you measure somebody as a level 1 negotiator versus level 10 or whatever the scale is?
Really good question. And this is a challenge for organizations, and it's not easy, but this needs to be a highly collaborative process between sales, between HR, between, the C-suite, between market, between everyone, to make sure that we're all on the same page. And, if I'm a sales leader and I see someone that's, a bad, medium, good negotiator or a good problem solver or a good networker, whatever the competency is, it's risky for me to just say that. Yeah. Right, as a sales leader. So we have to work with them to align on what the definition is, what behaviors, what activities specifically do they need to demonstrate in order for me to say, hey, you're a level 1, or hey, you're level 2, hey, you're level 3, right? Negotiation's a good example. Do you need to bring in your VP of sales to close big deals, or can you consistently close them on by yourself? Mm-hmm. Yes or no? That might be a differentiating aspect between low and high. So we work together as an organization to drive alignment on what the competency criteria are. We develop a career path around those competencies and perhaps a pay structure. People might get a raise or might get an improved pay bump other than cost of living, in a year where they escalate throughout the competency model a bit more. But what's probably more important, is that we have a cadence for this, and that HR is very closely involved. They're probably kind of the owner of executing that process, where, twice a year or so, we're having conversations with the people that fall under the competency model. And to be perfectly clear, this is usually not just a sales thing. The criteria for salespeople are going to be different for the people in IT or product or wherever. But an organization-wide model is pretty important. Now, my lens, I'm thinking it from a revenue organization point of view, so I'll run with that, but just wanted to be clear. But do it once every 6 months. Managers sit down with their direct reports. Direct reports sit down with their managements up and down the organization. I, as a manager, I give my people a rating 1 through 5, 1 through 3 on the various categories that I want them to demonstrate. They'll probably fill out a self-assessment too. Then we'll come to alignment. Then the managers have a conversation about all the people on their team to make sure that we're aligned on where these people fall. If I'm manager 1 and I've got 8 people that report up to me and I say, Bob's the best. And then manager 2 has 8 people that report to him and he says, Jenny's the best.
Bob and Jenny, they're awesome.
Bob and Jenny are super good sellers. But, how do we know? Can we say that one's better than the other? Or what skills is one demonstrating that the other is not? What do we need to do to target growth in the gaps for high performers, mid performers, low performers? Now, bringing the conversation back to HR and enablement, right? This all feeds into the type of content that we need to be feeding to the revenue organization in order to make sure that we are continuously escalating their capabilities, escalating their ability to be productive and efficient in their customer facing activities and pushing items through the sales process smoothly, rather than just, again, doing a shotgun approach. So enablement, again, collaborating with HR because they're managing that competency process and will have a big hand in supporting push out of that training and inviting and conducting these sorts of trainings, or pushing content, working with a third party, that kind of thing. And keeping track of how people are advancing throughout an organization.
Does RevOps play any role in saying, let's go back to Bob and Jenny. Bob and Jenny?
Bob and Jenny.
Bob and Jenny are awesome.
They're so good.
They're so good. I can't believe it. So lucky to find Bob and Jenny.
I can't believe it.
I know. But how can we mitigate that luck is my question. Do you play a role in saying, here's Bob and here's Jenny. They're amazing. We're so lucky to have them. Here's why Bob is amazing. And here's why Jenny's amazing. And here's why Angela's amazing. And here's why Jeff is not as amazing. Mm-hmm. Here are the consistent skills and talents and experiences that make these people awesome. And a lot of times they're probably different. I even look at our own organization. I look at our most successful people, and the skills that make one person successful are incredibly different than the skills that make another person successful. Point. Do you play a role in saying, this person is awesome because of this person is awesome because of this? How do we interview for these skills and find people that have complementary or similar skills that are more likely to be just as awesome as Bob and Jenny? Because again, so lucky to have found them. But let's see if we can work it a little bit so it's a little less luck and a little bit more tactical.
Yeah. I think a lot of that comes down to a topic I was talking about a little while ago, and that's job profiles. What are the specific skills that we need to have in order to do the coverage and target the customers that we want to, which we decided that all before when we're thinking about our go-to-market strategy, right? Now, revenue operations is iterative. It's a cycle.
Okay.
So as a young organization, we don't have any of this stuff, right? So when we're designing jobs, we're like, all right, well, we want someone with 3 years of experience and they know a lot about, hydraulics.
So arbitrary.
Great. And then as we grow up and we get more mature and we start building out our enablement functionality and we start thinking about competencies, then we can circle back to the job roles and say, okay, not only do we want someone with, a college degree and 3 years of experience with hydraulics, we also want them to be able to demonstrate that they're a strong negotiator, that they have good networking skills, that they have good perseverance, using somewhat fluffy terms at this point, but we will learn as an organization how to test for and interview for the types of competencies we want people to demonstrate. So we should be able to get to a better and better and better starting point by elevating our ability to find candidates who demonstrate the things that we want them to demonstrate.
Is there ever a way to objectively interview for this stuff? We'll stick with our negotiation example. Yeah, you can kind of see it throughout the interview process, and especially after you make an offer. Do they negotiate with you after an offer is made? But so much of it is you're going on gut human instinct, which is one of the most fallible things on the planet. Mm. Is there a way to objectively do it and be confident that we need someone with 3 years of a hydraulic experience? It's so arbitrary. Why? What is it that made you say we need to have at least 3 years of experience in hydraulics? If they don't have 3 years of hydraulics experience, there's no way they could possibly ever be successful in our business. It's bullshit. But even as you're interviewing for these soft skills, which I do think play a bigger impact on a person's potential for success, can you say, I am confident that this person is a 7 out of 10 in their negotiation skills, they're an 8 out of 10 in their sales skills, they're 9 out of 10 on their ability to use technology, and if they're at least a 7 here, at least an 8 here, and at least a 9 here, 90% sure they're going to be successful. Is there a way to do that? And is there a way to do it that isn't going to make me want to rip my fucking hair out of my head because it's so tedious and annoying to do?
Sure. The consultant answer is it depends, right? Because you can't always make those as objective as you would like to. Like, I could talk with 100 sellers and say, have you ever negotiated down 20% under list price? yes or no, and I could filter out all the people that say yes. But that's kind of cruddy. Like, it's a metric that you can pay attention to.
And everybody's going to lie about it.
Probably, yeah. But as a interviewer, you can get more and more savvy in terms of how you kind of test for that, right? So I don't think that there's necessarily a consistent, objective way to test for those, call them soft skills. Mm-hmm. You want someone that's a high performer? Great. Ask them what their quota attainment was. That's more simple, right? And talk with them about what percentage of people attain quota, where did they fall in the ranks. But when you're thinking about problem solving or, communication skills, you can kind of see that in an interview, but you can't necessarily, it's hard to say there's an objective metric for it, right? And the level or degree that you want for each organization is going to vary, and each manager's interpretation of what it means to be good at XYZ is going to vary. So I think, the objective metric is fast forwarding 3 or 4 years, and did the person that you hired that you thought demonstrated X, Y, and Z continue to do that and succeeded within your organization, right? Mm-hmm. Going back to one thing that you mentioned about, oh, hey, this person's a 7, oh, hey, this person's an 8 during the interview process. I think it's important to note that when you think about grading skills through that competency model or talent management process, that the null hypothesis is that they are a 1, and we need to prove ourselves wrong if we want to make them a 2, if we want to make them a 3, or that kind of thing, right? Keep saying that kind of thing, so I'm going to try and stop saying that now. But everyone should be at the low level until they prove us wrong, even if they come into the org and we think otherwise.
How do you get them to prove it?
Relative to one another. As a sales manager or any kind of leadership, I'm seeing what people are doing. I'm going on joint sales calls with them. I should then be able to gauge how well they're doing. If I'm a sales manager in XYZ organization, presumably I'm able to demonstrate exceptional capabilities in each of those areas. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten the gig or I wouldn't have been promoted. So, talent management is typically a really important competency for people that manage other people or manage individual contributors. And the way that we can gauge that is, are the people on your team achieving their goals and advancing through their competencies? If I'm a manager and everyone on my team is achieving 100% of quota, but they're all level 1s and they're not making it up or not advancing through the model, versus a manager that everyone's achieving quota but they're advancing, then I'd probably choose the second manager, mm-hmm. right? Now, this is a crude example, so to speak, because we're probably not going to have everyone achieving 100% of quota on both of those teams, but
you need a higher quota then.
That's true. You would need a higher quota at that point.
Is there a way to utilize revenue ops to future-proof against some of the challenges that we've seen with hiring and layoffs over the last couple of months? So I look out in tech specifically, where, year and a half, 2 years ago, every company is growing like crazy and hiring like mad and hiring all these people in talent acquisition because our people are our most important resource. We need to hire the best, and we need all of these people on staff to hire the best. Mm-hmm. And then, unbelievably, things did not continue at that meteoric rise infinitely. Mm-hmm. Things tapered off. Things normalized a little bit. And the first cuts were talent acquisition. Mm-hmm. We don't need to hire as many people. We've got all these people on board to hire people. Well, let's get rid of them. Is there a way to utilize this area of focus, revenue operations, to help mitigate and weather the highs and lows of hiring, firing challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. But I want to be careful here, because it's not just about avoiding turnover. Now, turnover is the starting point is that let's assume turnover is bad and we want to avoid it. But it's a necessary evil, and we have to expect some, right?
People should leave. They should leave for other opportunities occasionally.
Right, and we should get rid of the people that stink on the team, right? But I'm going to use an analogy, okay? The sales leader, the CEO, whatever individual that's in leadership at an organization you want to choose, they're the captain of the ship, okay? They are trying to make sure that we get where we're going to go. They are telling the people, under the deck. I don't know a lot about boats, so I'm probably using bad terminology, but everyone that's under the deck that's rowing is rowing in the right direction at the right pace. Fast, slow, are they getting tired? Do they need a break? Are we burning out? Revenue operations is in the crow's nest.
Okay.
They're at the top of the ship, seeing what's coming down, the pipeline, so to speak, or see what's coming on the horizon, and communicating that with leadership, okay? And it's not just about, hey, I see some inefficiencies in our org that could limit our productivity, but also, hey, we're seeing some strains in the market. We're seeing some economic or macro factors that may put us at risk. Now, I'm not saying that RevOps people need to be economists, but I think they need to be conscious of, an understanding of market trends. If I'm a RevOps person and I'm 90% certain that things are going to get tough, we're seeing the funding slow down or investments slow down for organizations like ours, and stocks are starting to taper. Whatever indicators you want to pay attention to, maybe we should be a little bit more conscious of where we look. Or if we see that our growth rate as an organization is slowing drastically, or we're contracting, sure, we need to think about what levers we can pull in order to improve the productivity and efficiency of the people that we have. But the RevOps person also needs to be conscious of not just revenue, despite that that's in the name, but the profitability of the revenue that they have. Okay, so, do we need to be more aggressive in letting people that stink go? Some people that stink we can make better. Who can't we make better? Let's be a little bit more quick about trimming the fat, so to speak. Again, being blunt in my terminology here, but failing fast with new talent and being direct and decisive with regards to the talent that doesn't meet our needs at the time. Because if the market's going to go down 20% and tech is struggling, I don't want to have to pay for the people that are costly and are not generating the ROI that I want them to generate, right? Now, instead, there are, again, other levers that you can pull. If we can't extract or drive more productivity or increase the efficiency of the organization or level up the underperformers to be high performers, we can think about other methods. Can we, again, being super blunt, can we pay new hires less? It's a tight market. Are we able to pull in talent at a lower cost in order to shorten the time to value of the people that we hire? Can we modify our compensation plans in order to save costs against, either writ large, which, I would advise against, but save cost against lower performers, which in the past year or two, I worked on a number of projects with private equity firms where that was kind of the mandate. Let's continue to let's evolve our compensation plans such that it's cost neutral or perhaps cost savings under the same sort of performance distribution, right? So assume a normal bell curve between 50 and 150% of quota. The expected cost of that for a sales organization is $10 million. If we achieve that same distribution, maybe I'm fine paying that much. But if we fall short, if the market's in trouble and we don't hit our goals, as an investor in an organization, as a shareholder in an organization, as a leader of an organization, I want failure to be less expensive.
Okay.
And I'm okay paying more for success. So some of the levers that organizations will typically pull, or we might advise that people pull in order to maximize their ROI, especially in times of trouble, just limiting the payouts to underperformers. Either say, hey, you need to hit 50% of quota before we start paying you, using a threshold in the plan, or just lowering the payout rate. The way we reward high performers more and make the plans more motivational and impactful is let's increase accelerator rates when people achieve quota. Let's remove caps when people achieve quota. Let's add, let's enhance our President's Club for people that get over 120%. Whatever it is, there are ways to mitigate the cost of failure. And even if you wanted to, call it control or not increase the cost of success, which that might be a hit to morale, you could do that as well. You can lower the net cost of compensation plans and communicate it in a way that it doesn't seem quite as bad if you want to, right? But most of the organizations that I've worked with in the past, again, using the term, the null hypothesis is that the plan designs that we go forward with should be cost neutral relative to our current state plans. But I have worked with organizations in the past, typically, PE funded organizations where they want to have, call it a more efficient cost structure or sales investment structure where failure costs less, success costs the same or more.
Companies that understand the importance of revenue operations and looking at the profitability of an organization like this, how do you couple that while being able to build an organization with an emphasis on culture and its people? Or is it an impossibility? And when you look at revenue ops, you do have to look at it as numbers, because they're very clear.
Mm-hmm.
If we do this, we will be more profitable. We'll generate more revenue. Failure is cheaper. I want success to cost similar or the same.
Mm-hmm.
How can organizations look at that while still having to focus on the humanity and the culture of their organization?
Yeah, I think culture definitely matters. And I think that revenue operations can play a role in that. Take an organization that's, very old school. They are very formal, rigid rules, and I'm running out of descriptors, but I think you get the point,
yeah.
Right? Versus an organization that, let's just say is more fun. People have more friends, they're doing happy hours or whatever. Those types of organizations are going to attract different types of people,
mm-hmm.
right? So let's say that as a hiring strategy, I happen to want people that prefer the latter. They want a place that when you're here, your family, right? Rather than a place where do a job, get it done, or you're out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Organizations need to decide what's appropriate for them and shape their culture around that. I'm not saying either of those, ends of the spectrum is right or wrong. But if you're an organization that's, used to pursuing talent of a certain type, or is going to pursue a talent of a certain type, and there's a certain cultural norm in the market, it's probably good to adhere to that to some extent. I'm not saying every organization needs to have a ping pong table or a slide in their place.
You said I don't think either end of the spectrum is wrong. I do. I think both ends of the spectrum are wrong. I think that if you're focused on only finding, the dumbass stereotypes of ping pong tables and slides, is just as bad as you are here to do a job. If you don't do your job, you're gone. There's a middle to all of it,
mm-hmm.
and understanding that people are people, but we're not a family, because you don't fire somebody from your family,
mm-hmm.
and people don't quit their families. People get fired from jobs all the time. People
Sure.
quit their jobs all the time, as they should. People should be fired. People should quit from time to time. But there's a middle to it. And how do you marry the idea of hiring people that can enhance an organization and help make them better from a cultural standpoint, while still hiring people to the revenue and profitability of a business, because that's what we're here for. We are here as a business to ideally do good in the world while making money to better ourselves and better our families.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the middle of that? How do you marry all of that together?
I think it's important that the people that are in a position to call it shape the organization from an organizational point of view are aligned on what they want the culture to be and the rationale behind that, right? We might be an organization that, again, we just want to get the job done. Or we might be an organization that we want everyone to have a little bit of fun or get along really well, right? And these are, again, I don't want to say soft skills, but personality traits that we can recruit for. We might have someone that's strictly business. And they hate jokes and they smile a little bit, but it's very mechanical.
They hate jokes.
They hate jokes so much. Versus someone else that they're really friendly. They like jokes. And
jokes are awesome.
And, all that good stuff, right? If I'm if I'm a performance-oriented organization and not a culture-oriented organization, I don't give a darn about the person that loves jokes. I want the person that gets the job done. And even if those people are both getting the job done to the same degree, I might prefer the former person who isn't going to be concerned about the way our culture is. Not that it's good or bad, but they just want to get the job done. Whereas if we have that, bubbly joke lover in an organization that doesn't care about that, they're going to fail. If we have the person that hates jokes in the place that, loves jokes and fun, they're going to fail too. Okay, and they're not going to like it. So we need to find the people with the personality traits that match the culture of our organization, which is something that, leadership kind of needs to decide. Your chief people officer, or, chief employee experience officer, making up title names at this point. Chief people officers, real world, of course.
So to sum up, we need to focus in our hiring process on whether or not people like jokes.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing in any hiring strategy for your organization, Travis, because you seem to be the kind of place that likes some jokes. So don't worry about anything else. Create your competency model around how funny someone is and just go with that.
Got a good joke for me?
I'm not one of the funny people and I don't care for jokes, so I'm sorry, no.
That's why you're no longer at Miller Resource Group.
That's a great point.
All right. This has been fantastic, Tyler. Really appreciate it. Who are the types of people that should be reaching out to you? What can you help them benefit with, and how can they find you?
I appreciate you asking that. So I help and I work with organizations that need leadership, need direction for their go-to-market and revenue operations organizations. I think for me, my value proposition lies in helping startups, PE-backed companies, mid-sized organizations, call it, under $200 or $300 million typically, although I have plenty of experience working with, $1 billion+ companies. And also helping private equity firms either assess or enhance the value that their portfolio companies are able to bring them. So I want to work with and I can bring value to people in leadership positions at those types of companies. So again, CEOs, CROs, operating partners at private equity firms that, for lack of a better term, need a hired gun to step into an organization, make an assessment, help them prepare them for the future, and then execute against it. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. How can they find you?
Well, you can look me up on LinkedIn. You can go to my website, charlesnowen.com, and I'm happy to, talk with anyone who wants to schedule a meeting with me.
It's been Hired the Podcast with Travis Miller and my guest, Tyler Miller. Big thanks to Noah Cuff, our producer, as always, and talk to y'all soon.
Thanks, Travis.